So I don't know if you remember, but there's a thing called Mosaic and there's a thing called Netscape Navigator. So you were there in the beginning. What about the interface to the internet? How do you think the browser changes? And who gets to own the browser? We got to see some very interesting browsers. Firefox, I mean, all the variants of Microsoft Internet Explorer, Edge, and now Chrome. The actual, I mean, it seems like a dumb question to ask, but do you think we'll still have the web browser?
So I have an 8-year-old and he's super into it's like Minecraft and learning to code and doing all this stuff. So I of course I was very proud I could bring sort of fire down from the mountain to my kid, and I brought him ChatGPT and I hooked him up on his laptop, and I was like, this is the thing that's going to answer all your questions. And he's like, okay. And I'm like, but it's going to answer all your questions. And he's like, well, of course, like it's a computer. Of course it answers all your questions. Like what else would a computer be good for? Dad.
Yeah.
And
Never impressed.
Not impressed in the least. 2 weeks pass, and he has some question. And I say, well, have you asked ChatGPT? And he's like, Dad, Bing is better.
Ooh.
And why is Bing better is because it's built into the browser. Because he's like, look, I have the Microsoft Edge browser, and like it's got Bing right here. And then he doesn't know this yet, but one of the things you can do with Bing and Edge is there's a setting where you can use it to basically talk to any web page, because it's sitting right there next to the browser. And by the way, which includes PDF documents. And so you can in the way they've implemented in Edge with Bing is you can load a PDF and then you can ask it questions, which is the thing you can't do currently in just ChatGPT. So they're gonna push the meld. I think that's great. They're gonna push the melding and see if there's a combination thing there. Google's rolling out this thing, the magic button, which is implemented in. They put it in Google Docs, right? And so you go to Google Docs and you create a new document, and you instead of starting to type, you just say press the button and it starts to generate content for you. Right? Like, is that the way that it'll work? Is it going to be a speech UI where you're just going to have an earpiece and talk to it all day long? Is it going to be these are all this is exactly the kind of thing that this is exactly the kind of thing I don't think is possible to forecast. I think what we need to do is run all those experiments. And so one outcome is we come out of this with a super browser that has AI built in that's just amazing. There's a real possibility that there's a possibility here that the whole idea of a screen and Windows and all this stuff just goes away, because why do you need that if you just have a thing that's just telling you whatever you need to know?
And also, so there's apps that you can use. I mean, you don't really use them, being a Linux guy and Windows guy. There's one window, the browser, with which you can interact with the internet. But on the phone, you can also have apps. So I can interact with Twitter through the app or through the web browser. And that seems like an obvious distinction, but why have the web browser in that case if one of the apps starts becoming the everything app?
Yeah, that's right.
What Elon's trying to do with Twitter, but there could be others. There could be a Bing app. There could be a Google app that just doesn't really do search, but just do what I guess AOL did back in the day or something, where it's all right there. And it changes, the nature of the internet, because where the content is hosted, who owns the data, who owns the content, what is the kind of content you create, how do you make money by creating content, who are the content creators, all of that. Or it could just keep being the same, which is with just the nature of web pages changes and the nature of content, but there'll still be a web browser, because a web browser is a pretty sexy product.
Mm-hmm.
It just seems to work, because you have an interface, a window into the world. And then the world can be anything you want. And as the world will evolve, there could be different programming languages. It can be animated. Maybe it's 3-dimensional and so on. Yeah, it's interesting. Do you think we'll still have the web browser?
Every medium becomes the content for the next one. So the AI will be able to give you a browser whenever you want.
Interesting. Generated.
Another way to think about it is maybe what the browser is. Maybe it's just the escape hatch, right? Which is maybe kind of what it is today. Right, which is most of what you do is inside a social network or inside a search engine or inside somebody's app or inside some controlled experience, right? But then every once in a while there's something where you actually want to jailbreak, you want to actually get free.
The web browser is the FU to the man. You're allowed to. That's the free internet.
Yeah,
back the way it was in the 90s.
So here's something I'm proud of. So nobody really talks about it. Here's something I'm proud of, which is the browser, the web servers, they're still backward compatible all the way back to like 1992, right? So like you can still, what the big breakthrough of the web early on, the big breakthrough was it made it really easy to read, but it also made it really easy to write. It made it really easy to publish. And we literally made it so easy to publish. We made it not only so it was easy to publish content, it was actually also easy to actually write a web server.
Yeah.
Right. And you could literally write a web server in 4 lines of Perl code and you could start publishing content on it. And you could set whatever rules you want for the content, whatever censorship, no censorship, whatever you want. You could just do that. And as long as you had an IP address, right, you could do that. That still works, right? That still works exactly as I just described. So this is part of my reaction to all of this, like, all this just censorship pressure and all this, these issues around control and all this stuff, which is like, maybe we need to get back a little bit more to the Wild West. Like the Wild West is still out there. Now they will try to chase you down. Like they'll try to, people who want to censor will try to take away your domain name, and they'll try to take away your payments account and so forth if they really don't like what you're saying. But nevertheless, unless they literally are intercepting you at the ISP level, like you can still put up a thing. And so I don't know. I think that's important to preserve, right? Like because I mean, one is just a freedom argument, but the other is a creativity argument, which is you want to have the escape hatch so that the kid with the idea is able to realize the idea. Because to your point on PageRank, you actually don't know what the next big idea is. Right? Nobody called Larry Page and told him to develop PageRank. Like he came up with that on his own. And you want to always, I think, leave the escape hatch for the next kid or the next Stanford grad student to have the breakthrough idea and be able to get it up and running before anybody notices.